Welcome everybody to our Thrive Tribe and Co expert guest webinar for, what's the date today?
Oh gosh,
The
I don't know.
16th?
The 16th.
Friday the 16th of August, and today we are so excited to welcome Melanie Dimmitt, and we're going to tell you all about Melanie in a moment, but this is Melanie's first ever webinar, so she's even washed her hair.
She's looking radiant.
She looks beautiful, so we're so excited to have her. Now, Melanie reached out to us through one of our Thrive Tribe and Co community members because she has written an amazing book called Special, and she is a special needs mama just like us, and I'm going to let her share all about her book today, but we are super excited to have you on our webinar today, and welcome.
Thanks, guys. It's really nice to be called an expert guest.
Well, you're an author, so now you can claim it.
Well, I'm good at aggregating other people's wisdom, so yeah.
So why don't you tell everyone a little bit about you, because I know that this is not just something that's popped up randomly, like you're a journalist and you've been in this space for a little while. So why don't you just share a little bit about your life before the book?
Yeah, so before the book, before Arlo, my son, I was just working in Sydney. We just moved from Melbourne because I'd been offered a full-time job at a magazine called Collective Hub. So I was working in the office there in Surrey Hills, full-time writing. It's a lot of fun, a lot of hard work. And then, my partner and I went to Europe for a holiday, got engaged in Paris, and then got pregnant like 2 seconds later with Arlo. And we had an interesting pregnancy with him. So he had a hole in his heart, which we thought was going to be a big problem with him, and ended up closing up, so it wasn't. But anyway, we had quite a highly monitored pregnancy with that, so that was a bit stressful. But then it was 4 days past his due date, and his movements were like a little bit funny. And you know how they always tell you to come into hospital if the baby's movements are a bit weird. So we went into hospital, and they had a look at him, and they said, "Oh, look, he seems fine, but we'll keep you in overnight. We'll induce you in the morning." So kept me in overnight, checked on him a few times, he was fine. Then the following morning, I was all ready to be induced in a bed in the birthing suite at 8 a.m, connected up to the fetal heart monitor. And Ro and I were just watching the heart monitor kind of fluctuate a little bit, like high score, woohoo. And then all of a sudden his heart rate just completely dropped to almost nothing. So we pressed the button, the nurse came in. She, at that point, couldn't find any heartbeat. She was kind of scrambling around my belly with her stethoscope. So then the emergency button was pressed. About 10 doctors flooded into the room, and within seconds, like, my bed was being wheeled out, and I was on my way to theatre for an emergency cesarean. I went under general anaesthetic. They got Arlo out in around 10 minutes, which is amazing. But he sustained a brain injury from that experience, and an MRI showed that he had bilateral damage in the motor section of his brain. We were sort of told that, we'd have to wait and see what that meant. The word cerebral palsy was said at that point. We completely ignored it. We were like, he'll be fine, no matter what, this will be fine. We were in big time denial, and everyone around us was saying, oh, he looks great. He was feeding quite miraculously. You really couldn't tell anything was up when he was a tiny baby. So, and he was our first child. So again, we didn't have much of an idea, but then he sort of wasn't meeting any motor development milestones. He was smiling and gorgeous and engaged, but wouldn't roll, wouldn't sit up. And then at 6 months, he was officially diagnosed with cerebral palsy.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. Should I move my computer? Is my lighting a bit weird?
Nice. You look a bit like an angel.
Oh my God, it looks really glowing. I'll move around a bit and see if that helps.
Cool. So for those listening on the podcast, we're recording this webinar live, so we get the pleasure of seeing Melanie whilst we're speaking to you. But just take our word for it that she looks like an angel in the sunshine right now.
Like halo.
So let's go to that moment of diagnosis, because I know this is really confronting for many parents, whether it's cerebral palsy or autism or ADHD or whatever that is, what were the emotions, what were the things that you went through, and how did that lead down the track to this? Because I know that was something you were really passionate talking to us about last week.
Yeah, so I mean, we got the diagnosis. I, with that, even was still in big time denial. I was like, this isn't, it was just completely unacceptable to me. I was like, that is not what my life is going to be. That's not what my son's life is going to be. So we were really like doggedly like, no, this isn't happening. But at the same time, you know, it's an official medical diagnosis. So we knew, and we were really like deeply sad, kept crying sort of on and off in the weeks that followed. And I just, it was just so unacceptable. I just desperately wanted just a glimpse at what the future would look like. I needed to see that Arlo would be walking. That was so important to me at the time. And everyone kept saying, the best thing to do is to talk to other parents raising kids with disabilities. I did not want to talk to other parents raising kids with disabilities because that would have taken some level of acceptance on my part. I was like, no, I have nothing in common with these people. Like, there's no way I'm going to the support groups. I'm not going near it. Struggling even to say the word disability at this point in time. So I thought, well, like, I'll cheat. I'll just put on my journalist cap and say I'm writing a book and reach out to parents and interview them and ask them what they did to feel better at the start of this thing. Because I was wretched. I just needed some kind of relief. Someone to tell me.
Let's go back to that, because I actually found this so interesting when we talked to you last week, how you needed the information, but you actually didn't want to talk about your own experience. So that's why you put on your journal.
I thought, well, if I do this in the one-sided style of an interview, I won't have to share much of my story. The parents kept kind of asking me, so how are you? What are you? And I was like, nah, let's just
that's not how this works.
Yeah. But
what a great way to be helping yourself inadvertently in the process. Like, it's amazing how that can then, what that created, this book, as a result, and how it's going to help so many other families is just so exciting.
I hope so. Well, these parents were all, there's more than 50 in there. They're all over the world, kids with all different kinds of disabilities. And they were so generous with me. Like, the conversation would always go for more than an hour. They gave me so much. And I wasn't, certainly at the beginning, wasn't giving them much at all from my side. So I was so lucky. And I also thought, well, like, I'm no expert. We're kind of dealing with people's emotions pretty serious. I thought I'll chat to some psychologists and researchers and life coaches and specialists in the sector as well. So I got their input, and they've given me like some really good coping strategies and exercises as well. So Special is just a big mishmash of more than 40 parents and experts all giving us ways to feel better right at the start when you first get the diagnosis or you first discover your kid is traveling a different path. It's just to give you something like a quote or a way to turn around your negative thinking, or some thoughts around self-care that, self-care just seems completely bloody unachievable a lot of the time. Some really simple things you can do, some ways to start forming your community, like to put a toe in the water, because as you guys know, like, the Facebook groups, such a huge, amazing form of support. So I was lurking on a few of them right at the start very quietly, and that helped me so much as well. So just sort of some guidance as to how to start forming that community before you're really ready to, meet other special needs parents.
So why don't you fill everyone in a bit about, I know you've just touched on it, how the book works, because it's not like reading interviews, and I actually like that because from my understanding and my very brief understanding is it's split into like topics. So if you're struggling with grief, or if you are, feeling stressed or like anxiety or whatever, then it's split into topics.
Yeah, and there's a section on siblings, which I love as well, which we'll touch on as well, because that's a huge thing. So anyway, tell us.
I just thought that would be more useful, because at the time, at the start of this, I didn't want to read memoirs. I didn't want someone's entire sob story. I just wanted the useful stuff at the end, stuff that worked. So what happened was I didn't really know how I was going to structure it, but as I was talking to these parents, common themes were arising, and that those themes formed the chapters. So, you know, at the beginning, it's why me, dealing with, you know, broken dreams, unmet expectations, sort of moving into the feelings like grief. And like, they're not all negative. There's hope in there. There's a lot of joy in there. There's a whole section on comparison, because that is something that, I mean, parents struggle with that at the best of times. And when your kid isn't even starting in the same league as typical kids, it's like so much worse for us. There's, you know, self-care kept coming up, taking breaks, having someone else that can look after your kid in this world came up a lot. Chatting with other parents, be that in digital or real life form, came up a lot. So these things formed the sections and formed the chapters of this book. So yeah, I hope it's a reference guide that people can dip in and out. Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm feeling this today, I'll go to this section. I'm hoping that's how it will be used.
Yeah, I think that's so incredibly like useful and powerful, because we know us mamas, we don't have time to sit down often and read big long books, but like, it's so relevant to be able to go, okay, well, what how can this help me today?
100%. And I love as well that with each chapter, you'll see there's like a beautiful little quote that's relevant to that chapter.
Do you want to read?
So there's one that I just kind of, it's been playing on my mind. It's under Why Me. We're all just a car crash, a diagnosis, an unexpected phone call, a newfound love, or a broken heart away from becoming a completely different person. How beautifully fragile are we that so many things can take but a moment to alter who we are forever. So it's like, it has that kind of connotation of like, obviously when you get a diagnosis or you realize that your life isn't going to pan out the way that you expected in that fairy tale way, but then it also gives that element of hope where we can kind of change as easily as well, to move to think positively, right?
Yeah, well, you don't know how you're going to feel about things. Like, for me, having a child with disability, if you told me I was going to have a kid with disability before I had kids, I never would have had kids. I thought that was just the worst thing imaginable, not just for me, but for my child. I was like, they just won't have a life worth living. I hate even saying that now, because I know so differently. And I'm like, that girl is just such a freaking fool. But that's how I felt. Yeah. And now living my worst nightmares, you know, with a son who is nonverbal and non-mobile and will be in a wheelchair, like, I've never been happier. And he's the light of my life. And he has the best life. He is so happy. He's so passionate about so many things. Like, he loves his books. He loves his music. He loves his people. He loves his 20 little friends at daycare. And yes, he goes to daycare. And yes, it's a mainstream daycare. Like, I never would have thought in a million years that that would work out. But it has. And we're good. And like, our lives are really full and really busy, but they're so rich. And I never in a million years would have thought that I'd even accept like this scenario, like something I just thought was completely unacceptable for my life and my child's life.
That's beautiful. It's such a beautiful
like so many goosebumps.
You guys know it as well.
Totally. I always say that Imi always has the most fun in the room. Because part of her autism is that she actually doesn't want to interact with people or care what they're doing or what they're looking at. So she will dance the most, be the loudest, do the, you know, the most extreme stuff and have the best time. Whereas everyone else is sort of wondering, oh, what will they think? Or should I do that? There's just no filter. No. that's a perk, I think.
Yeah,
but definitely a different way to look at it. Let's change direction a little bit, because I want to talk about you as a woman and as a professional and as a mum. How has this helped you in terms of your own sense of well-being and your own sense of self-worth, like on this journey of pouring yourself into something that you're really passionate about, that's not it's not focusing on your child? Because I know as special needs mums, often we get so caught up in we have to be always thinking about our kids, but this is something separate from that, and it's something that's so empowering. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that. And I haven't prepped her for this question, so no, maybe.
Well, yeah, I mean, generally speaking, my work, like my writing, it's the only time I'm not thinking about Arlo and the kids and all the stuff I need to be doing and his millions of appointments, I totally disappear into it. Like, I love it. I'll be writing away and I'll look and 3 hours have passed. Like, it's the only thing that is like that for me. So in a general sense, like, I love my work. I love my writing for that reason. With the book, it was healing for me. It really fast tracked me to acceptance, to have like 50 parents telling me it's okay, it's not what you think it's going to be. Really worked for me in that sense. But it was also a huge distraction from what was going on at the time. It was like, okay, I'll give myself this massive, impossible project to do. And I got the book deal like a lot quicker than I thought I would. So, and I got it when I'd only written, not even a quarter of the book yet. So I had to get the rest of it out within like 6 months. So it's been crazy. But yeah, it's been a very, like, a good distraction for me. And yeah.
I love that word, distraction, because that's how I look at when I first ventured into building a business. It literally happened. I got diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and then 2 months later, Imogen got diagnosed with autism. And in that process, I was like, I'm going to build this, because it was like I used it as my fire, but it distracted me. And that's what people say, how did you do that then? I'm like, well, it was actually awesome because I didn't have to think about the MS, and, I didn't have to focus on that all the time. It gave me a productive way to work through those feelings. And look, I know in our community of Thrive Tribe & Co members and our wider community, there are mums with the most amazing skill sets and the most amazing passions, and that often put those to the side when really it could be a really productive way of forming a distraction that can empower them.
Absolutely.
Right?
Hell yeah. You need your thing. You need your thing that isn't parenting or running a house. Like, God, you desperately need that thing, even if it's something, there are other times that I can disappear. It has to be something really, really low brow, like The Bachelor. I'm so glad The Bachelor's back on. It takes something that bad for me to properly switch off. Like, there are so many appointments and so many words and so much conversation in my life. Like, it needs to be The Bachelor, glass of wine. Like, that's just my time.
Yeah.
Just mind-numbing TV.
Totally.
Yeah, exactly. Or, even little things like a bath. Like, I know, Steph, you love the bath as well.
Yeah.
And that's, that's only quick, like 10 minutes or whatever, but that just takes the edge off. I just think time to yourself and your own thoughts is just so crucial for us. Yeah.
Absolutely. I remember when I got the diagnosis for Charlie, or like when we were going through the process with her, I used to do Bikram yoga, and it's all about and I still do it a little bit, but I used to do it like 3-4 days a week. But when we were going through that process, I actually stopped because it was too confronting to be left alone with my thoughts. You really have to go into your head and focus, and it actually made me feel worse. So it's funny how then but I still needed something that was going to distract me or make me feel good. And it's funny how like the world or the universe presents things to you at the right time, because then it was in that moment that we connected.
I'm your distraction.
You are that's for real. Because I was really going through this time where I was okay, but I needed something that was going to constructively propel me forward and keep me going. And and so this community, like, as much as we love helping you guys, it's helps us as well. So, but totally get it.
All right. So out of your 50 plus interviews, what were some of your favorite tips that you could give to our mamas that are on the call today?
Yeah, well, gosh, you probably know already, like, everyone has their own strategies once they've been doing this gig for a while. I found that one thing that came up as a coping strategy for fear around the future, because that was a big one for me and a lot of other parents, like thinking about wheelchairs and hoists and all these things that are, probably going to be a reality for me in the future. The parents told me just to stay the hell out of the future, keep your thoughts in the moment. Like, it is this mindfulness thing, that we're all meant to be doing. And it's funny, I'm not good at meditations, or, I downloaded the apps and all those things. It didn't really work for me. But for self-preservation, I just stopped thinking about the future. Every time my mind would go there, I was just like, stop, you know, there's no point to this. You've learned that anything can happen in life because this has happened to you and you really didn't expect it. But you also know that no matter what happens, you don't necessarily know how you're going to feel about it anyway when it does happen. So absolutely no point in staying in the future, thinking about the future. Stay in the present. Even if that's like just focusing on your child's face, like looking into their eyes. I find that, you know, kids are always in the present. So it's good to try and tune in with them. Or if meditation works for you, mindfulness works, you know, that sort of thing, do it, download the apps. That's great. For me, it was very much, I just needed the distraction again, like my kid or work, just like staying in the moment. Yeah, it was a big.
I love that.
strategy.
I love that concept of looking into their eyes, because there are so many times yesterday, oh my God, I just had them both at home with me and I'm like, and I'm busy, 100 balls in the, as we all are. But it was me. Like, they weren't actually doing anything that bad. I wasn't coping. I was having my own little tantrum.
I'm thinking of the little Giphy thing you sent through to me of being run over by a kid's car. That's how she felt yesterday.
Honestly, it was madness.
One of those days.
Exactly. But if it's in those moments, if you can just try and slow down and take a moment to just be like focusing on what they're doing and how beautiful they are, and just look into their eyes if you can, and just absorb that, how grounding that could be, right?
Yeah, that really works for me. Another strategy, it was really good, like for turning things around, like why me? Like, think you're sitting there thinking, why me? Instead, kind of think, well, why not you? Like, we're all lucky we live in Australia. We've got the support. The NDIS has really helped things out there. You know, a lot of us are hopefully in loving families. It's kind of like, well, why not you? You know, you can do this sort of thing. So just switching around the thoughts like that really helped. Every single parent said you need to take breaks. You need to have someone trained up in your kid, even if it's just like 10-minute break. So essential. Every single parent said that.
I would even say multiple people, because having only one is still limiting.
Yeah, for sure. What else did they say? I had some really cool stuff around comparison. Janie Johnson has a son, Dare, who has Down syndrome, and she was an awesome interview. She'd say she's at the point now where she looks at typical families and she's like, oh, how boring, like how generic.
I love that.
Which is, it really works. Like, I love saying that to myself, and it's true. And we've got this thing going on that is really special. Like, that's the special I'm talking about in the book. It's not referring to our kids, like our kids aren't that special. Like, you realize they're actually ordinary. But what's special is our experience and how much we learn from them, and the perspective that we have from them on everything. Like, it, you know, trickles out into so many facets of life. And we have this shared thing, like other mums and dads get it. You know, like this whole group gets it. There's something to this that's hard to put into words, but it's special and it's awesome.
I think it's even the women or the people we need to become in the process is special, because it's such a huge learning curve, and it's constant learning. It's not just like you get there and I know everything. And then I just feel like Emmy moves the goalpost on me. Like, I get there and I'm like, yes, and then she's like, no, not doing that anymore.
Or the Rubik's Cube.
I have this analogy of Emmy being like a Rubik's Cube, where I'll turn it and I'll finally get one side right and all the colours match up, and then I look at all the other sides and they're all screwed. Right? And I was like, it's created all these new problems. But that is the beauty of the journey, right, is that we're constantly growing and learning and having these skills.
Yeah, totally. And it's funny, you don't want to kind of go down that whole inspiration track, because like one of the mums in the book said to me, you know, it's not our kids' job to inspire us, sort of thing, but it's like you said, like the person you are required to be to do this day to day is so, like, such, well, certainly for me, I am a much better person than I was. Like, man, I was self-involved, selfish, like I still am, sure, but nowhere near to the level I was before Arlo came along. And I think it's made me a better mum to Odie, my daughter as well, Arlo's little sister. It's just not having so many expectations around her, because with Arlo we just chose to kind of let go of all that. But we threw the book out. There's no point. I mean, he wasn't meeting any milestones. We're like, hey, we'll just write the story from here. And it's, I think, taken a lot of pressure off what, with Odie, I think I would have been stressing out over every tiny thing, but we're like just watching her develop naturally and beautifully. And it's such a joy, like, to see that and not be freaking out over every tiny thing as I know I would have been.
That's a whole other call, I reckon.
I know, we could get going.
like, are they really useful, those things?
Yeah.
Well, I know that you have a really special offer for some of our people on the call today. Like, they're all excited now. Change the screen settings so I can see them all. So we had a chat with Melanie, and we want to help Mel share the word about her book. And in order to do that, I thought, who better to give her some reviews than our wonderful Inner Circle members. So Melanie is actually going to gift us 10 copies of Special, and all we ask in return is that you do a little picture and a little short review that Mel can use on her social media. And if you are keen to do that, we will get some of these into the post for you. So how does that sound, ladies?
Very happy
hands, thumbs up.
Yes. I love it.
Big thumbs up. While we've got Amanda's put a hand up, she's raised a hand in the chat bar. So while we have Mel, we've got a few more minutes. Does anyone have any questions? It's not often we get a special author on our call. I feel very excited to have you. So if you want to ask a question, just let us know and we can open up your line. I think Michelle's trying to unmute. Yeah,
she does. Yeah.
Hold on, I'll unmute you.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi. I've actually already shared about your book on my blog post thing. Coffee, Kids and Coping, and your book sounds like something I manifested for some reason. It doesn't make any sense. I don't know. So I don't know how much of this is a question. Sorry. It was just earlier this year. I'm like, what would I have wanted when my daughter was born? And it's like a freaking manual would have been nice. Like something to say, it's actually okay to do this and it's okay to do that and it's okay for this. Like permission. It's like I needed permission for stuff. So my daughter was born HIE, so she was born not breathing and went and got hypothermically cooled down. And so when you were sharing the story earlier, I'm just
all coming back. Yeah,
and it does, and it comes back. And just that grief. Like I did my first yoga session a few months ago. It's last October now. I had this yoga session and it was like my first one, and I did this hip release. Sorry, it feels like a tangent. And during the hip exercise, she was saying, "Oh, you might be releasing some emotions." And at the time, I was like, "No." And then later, lying down in shavasana, and I'm just like, and I just didn't realize I held my grief in my hips. Just random stuff like that, and it's just. But no, back in January, I thought to myself, oh, my God, I'd love to be able to write something so that someone who's brand new in this world does not feel alone and they know what these things are and that they do actually happen and that you're not unique, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so, because I knew nothing of this world, if that makes sense.
Oh, same. And I didn't really want anything to do with it.
I read a book called The Skies I'm Under, which was so it's just anyway, so it was just kind of weird that when you were describing what's actually in the book, and I was just like, oh my God. Yeah, sorry.
Can you please write your book too? Because we need more of this stuff in the space. Like, I feel like there's this massive gaping hole. There's plenty of memoirs, but like I said, I wasn't ready for memoirs at the start of this.
I need to get out of my own way. That's my thing at the moment, is that I'm just my brain's still telling me lots of lies and lots of stuff like that, if that makes any sense whatsoever. So but no, I'm definitely looking forward to reading it. As I said, I already sort of shared about it on my page, and so
what was the name of your blog? That sounded awesome.
So it's my name, so Michelle Hogan, and it's Coffee, Kids and Coping. And I think I first saw your book, Ariana's Army. Ariana's Army shared it. So that's
introduced us to Mel.
Yeah. And it's just about, like, the whole reason why I sort of started my blog is, like, I want people to go on Facebook, search HIE, and actually find someone who's actually sharing about it, because when I went on Facebook or on the internet and I'm looking up HIE, nothing came up. And I'm like, why can't I find anything? I couldn't understand how. And there's nothing like that feeling of being alone. It was the worst. That was the biggest one. I was just like, oh my God, I'm alone. Like, this is just, so. Yeah, and of course when they're a baby and you're in wait and see land,
which is so terrifying. There's just a big empty space in front of you and you fill it with your worst nightmares and stuff that you've Googled. Like, you just create this like monster in your head, like, of what the future's gonna be.
It's just wait and see land. And then so I sort of had a different feeling around diagnoses for myself as well, which isn't like, for me they weren't devastating. For me they were answers to my questions. I kept asking why is she not doing this? Why is she not doing that? And then I got a diagnosis and I was like, oh, okay, so that's validation for me. Like, it was like, so anyway, I've probably taken over a little bit here, so I'll
I've seen you on social media land, because that Coffee Kids and Coping really stood out to me, because I'm like, man, coffee.
Coffee better.
Anyway.
Awesome. Does anyone else have another question? People are driving. No, that was, she was raising her hand saying, I want the book. All right, so we will pop a post into our members group. We will have all the links for sharing Mel's book. So, and we will get these to you ASAP. So comment on the post in there and we'll organise to get you your copy. But Mel, we are so grateful that you jumped on today and shared your story and filled us in about your book, and just thank you for like going first and for really like leading the way in this space. It's so needed.
Oh, thank you for saying those lovely things, and thank you for having me, and sorry for my really shoddy visual with the sun freaking beating in. It's my first time. I'm learning the webinar. And thank you so much everyone for tuning in and listening. I hope you like the book. I hope it helps a bit.
I'm sure they will. Thank you so much. See you later, guys.
Bye.
Bye.